Members of the 119th Congress will be sworn in just after New Year's. And for the incoming freshmen, this week's Republican-led dysfunction might just be a good indicator of what they can expect in office for the next 2 years. One of those freshmen is Democratic Congresswoman-elect Laura Gillen of New York. Now, Gillen was one of 3 Democrats who defeated Republican incumbents in the state last month. She beat Anthony D'Esposito by over 2 points to represent New York's 4th congressional district. And the Congresswoman-elect joins us now.
Congresswoman-elect, good morning to you. Any part of you that watched what transpired this past week and thought, what have I gotten myself into?
I was watching for sure, and thinking about how that will impact the new incoming Congress, and certainly hoping that there's less chaos when we come into office in January.
Congresswoman-elect, you had Hakeem Jeffries noting that Democrats were out there fighting for families. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
House Democrats have successfully stopped the Billionaire Boys Club, which wanted a $4 trillion blank check, by suspending the debt ceiling in order to enable them to cut Social Security, cut Medicare, and cut nutritional assistance while providing massive tax breaks for the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected.
As a newly minted member coming into the Congress, how does that resonate with you, and how do you think it will resonate with your constituency as the next administration comes into starker focus? Democrats positioning themselves along the narratives regarding working families, working mom and dads, and particularly those who are in the Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid networks. How do you see that language working and helping make the case for Democrats?
Well, look, I think a lot of what we saw in this election cycle is that families are still hurting. The cost of living is a really top concern. It was a top concern in my district. I think it's a top concern across the country. And the idea that we're going to give tax breaks to the wealthiest people while not helping folks that are struggling to make ends meet, well, we're talking about cutting Social Security, that is not tenable, and it's going to be really disastrous for a lot of Americans. So I think that is something that will continue to be an issue as we go forward. I ran on a campaign of reaching across the aisle and looking to find bipartisan solutions. I think that what we saw with the original deal was good democracy in action, where there was a negotiated deal. Both sides came together. There was give and take. And then when the Republicans published the deal, all of a sudden an unelected person just blew up the deal with tweets on social media. That is really disturbing, and that is not good governance. When you make a deal, you need to have trust in your partners that they'll honor the deal. So it was disturbing to me to watch that unfold, and I hope that won't be continued in the next Congress, because it'll be incredibly hard to get things done. There's a very narrow majority for the Republicans. They're going to need Democratic support to get a lot of important legislation passed. And certainly, when you make a deal and then you back out of a deal, it doesn't build a lot of trust with the other side that there's any value in compromise, because it could just be blown up at the next second, when you're about to vote on it with a tweet. So hopefully that was just a bad moment, and going forward, we can work to reestablish those bonds of trust between the Republican and the Democratic caucus and get things done, because there are things that we have to address right away, and we need to do it in a bipartisan fashion.
You know, Congresswoman-elect knows something about making a deal. I was reading in the aftermath of the election, the New York Times did a profile about you and your race, and they noted that by all accounts, you should not have won this race, because if you just looked at the district and the data that the congressman that sat in the seat before you and got elected when Democrats lost the House 2 years ago, the area, the Nassau County Republican Party machine was strong. You were the only Democrat in 112 years to be the Hempstead town supervisor. You have had to work across the aisle to keep the last job you had. And to get this job that you have now as a Congresswoman-elect, you went to the various constituencies. You stood on the border of the Queens-Nassau County line and talked about how what is happening while you were 2,000 miles from the U.S.-Mexico border, what is happening there is affecting what's happening here, and you will do something about it. You talked about Medicare and Medicaid and insulin prices. You met the people where you were, and I think that there are more members like you in the United States Congress than folks like the Matt Gaetz and the Marjorie Taylor Greenes of the world.
I agree. You know, we just had new member orientation, and then there's a program for new members at Harvard that's bipartisan. So you go to seminars together about the economy, about taxes. Then you break and you eat lunch together. You eat dinner together. You have coffee together. And it's really a wonderful thing. And I will say about these Republican colleagues that I met at Harvard and at new member orientation, we might not be ideologically on the same page about everything, but there was a genuine desire to work together and tackle important problems. And I'm hoping that that spirit of cooperation, certainly I was looking to make allies on the other side. So when I'm bringing something to the floor, when I want to go to the other side to try to get some support, I have developed these friendships through new member orientation and through the program at Harvard. And then we have another program coming up for new members where we all go to Williamsburg together. And so I think that that is really good to develop that kind of camaraderie on the other side. And so I think we have to just break through the rhetoric on both extremes and try to get to just governance, which is what we're sent to Congress to do. I was sent there by my constituents. You know, not just Democrats voted for me, some independents voted for me, some Republicans voted for me, and they just want problems fixed. They just want Congress to go to Washington and make their lives better. Make sure they don't lose their Social Security. Make sure we're taking care of immigration reform. That's something that we needed to take care of for a long time. I'm going to protect reproductive freedom. We saw a lot of Republicans in this campaign walk away from a national abortion ban and say, oh, no, I support a woman's right to choose. Well, let's hold their feet to the fire and let's protect reproductive freedom for women in this country. So I think there's a lot of room for compromise. We just can't have Twitter culture make us afraid to do what's right for the American people.
Well, Twitter culture is definitely on the mind of one speaker, Mike Johnson. He was asked this past week whether or not he still even wants to be speaker. Take a listen to what he said.
Do you still want to be speaker after this experience?
Look, being Speaker of the House is a challenge in this modern era, but it's a challenge that we accept. It's a great honor to serve in the position. I wouldn't say it's the most fun job in the world all the time, but it's an important one.
So in this modern era, I guess, is defined as an era in which Elon Musk, an unelected person, is somehow getting a say in what happens in Congress, in the U.S. government. Do you think when you are sworn into Congress that it is, in fact, going to be a speaker, Mike Johnson, you are working with?
You know, I was wondering about this because we all wonder when we're going to get sworn in. We saw at the last swearing in, it took 15 rounds before we could swear in them members. So I was kind of getting a sense from my colleagues, is Mike Johnson going to make it? Is it going to be one vote and then we'll all get sworn in? And it looked like yes until the past couple of days. So now I honestly can't say. You'd have to ask someone on the other side what's going to happen on January 3rd.
Look at that message.